Evan's ship shuddered as it entered the thick atmosphere of the uncharted planet. The controls beeped urgently, but he managed to steady the vessel. Outside, he could see the planet's surface, a mix of purple forests, glowing rivers, and jagged mountains stretching far into the horizon. He had never seen anything like it. Evan was both a scientist and a medic, trained to explore dangerous worlds. He had prepared for hostile wildlife, extreme weather, and unknown terrain. But nothing could prepare him for the strange sense of being watched, as though the planet itself was alive and aware of his presence. The landing was rough, and as soon as the ship's legs touched the ground, Evan jumped out to examine the surrounding area. He wanted to record the flora and fauna before night fell. He carried his medical kit, a scanner, and a small energy pistol, mostly for defense against animals, not intelligent species. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet. Bioluminescent plants lit the path in soft, eerie hues. Strange insects buzzed in the air, and tall trees twisted toward the sky like towers. Evan moved carefully, noting every detail, when suddenly the ground beneath him gave way. With a sharp cry, he tumbled into a hidden pit, hitting the edge on the way down. Pain shot through his arm and shoulder. He groaned, feeling the blood trickle down. He tried to get up, but the pit was steep, and the jagged rocks made every movement dangerous. Evan knew he had to be careful. A severe injury on an unknown planet was dangerous, especially if any intelligent species lived nearby. He inspected his arm. There was a deep gash. He applied a temporary bandage with trembling hands. His heart raced as he realized he couldn't climb out without help. From above, he heard faint noises, rustling and low clicks. His instincts screamed that someone, or something, was approaching. He ducked behind a rock, scanning for movement. Suddenly, a group of figures appeared at the edge of the pit. They were tall, strong, and dressed in shimmering armor. Their skin had a greenish hue, and they carried long, spear-like weapons. Evan's stomach tightened. He had heard legends of alien warrior races, but he had never seen them. One of the warriors barked something in a sharp, clicking language. The others lifted their spears, pointing them at Evan. He froze, unsure if they wanted to communicate or kill him. Then, as if appearing from nowhere, a figure stepped forward. Taller than the rest, she moved with grace and authority. Her eyes glowed softly in the dim light, and her posture radiated power. Evan felt a chill. This must be the queen. The alien queen. She stopped at the edge of the pit and looked down at him. Her gaze was sharp, yet not hostile. She noticed his injury immediately. Her hand lifted, and the guards hesitated. Slowly, they lowered their spears, but their eyes never left him. Evan didn't know what to do. Every instinct screamed to run, but with his arm injured, running was impossible. He raised his hands, showing he was unarmed and did not want to fight. The queen studied him carefully, tilting her head. She moved closer, her eyes examining his wound. Then she spoke, though he could not understand the language. Her tone was calm, almost curious. She seemed concerned. One of the guards approached cautiously with a small device that emitted light. The queen motioned for them to wait. Evan realized she wanted to see if he was hurt before making any decisions. Her gesture was strange, almost like an offer of mercy. With effort, Evan crawled closer to the edge of the pit. He hoped they would help him out. He tried to speak using simple words and gestures. "I hurt, arm, help. Please." His voice was hoarse from pain and fear. The queen's eyes softened. She motioned for one of the guards to throw down a rope. It landed near him, and Evan grabbed it with both hands, wincing as he pulled himself up. The guards stepped back, their posture still cautious, but there was no attack. Once on solid ground, Evan collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. The queen knelt beside him, observing the injury closely. She pointed at his arm, then at herself, miming a healing action. Evan nodded weakly, understanding that she wanted to help. Her guards hesitated but allowed one of them to step forward. The warrior produced a strange, glowing device and touched Evan's wound. Light shimmered across the gash, and he felt warmth and relief. Pain that had been sharp and unrelenting softened into a dull ache. Evan looked up at the queen. She gave a slight nod and then stepped back, watching as her healers continued their work. He felt a strange mix of fear, gratitude, and awe. He had expected hostility, but instead, he found curiosity, care, and respect. After a while, the Queen motioned for him to stand. Evan's arm was bandaged, his pain reduced, though he was still weak. He noticed her guards were observing him closely, their initial suspicion still there but tempered with a hint of admiration. Evan realized something important. These aliens were not mindless warriors. They had rules, hierarchy, and a sense of honor. If he wanted to survive and maybe even gain their trust, he had to show courage, patience, and respect. The Queen turned and gestured for him to follow. Her guards flanked him on either side, keeping a careful distance. Evan took a deep breath, steadying himself. Every step was difficult, but he kept moving, knowing that retreat was not an option. As they walked through the glowing forest toward the Queen's palace, Evan tried to memorize every detail. The way the trees bent toward the path, the soft hum of alien insects, and the strange glowing rivers. He knew he might never see another world like this, and already, a part of him was captivated. Finally, they reached a clearing. At its center stood a structure unlike anything Evan had ever seen. Tall towers of crystal and metal, shimmering with light, and surrounded by floating platforms. The Queen stopped in front of it, turning to look at him once more. Her eyes seemed to say something he could not understand. Something like, "You are far from home, human, but perhaps you are more than what you seem." Evan nodded slowly, unsure if she understood, but grateful for her attention. He had survived the pit, survived the first encounter, and now stood on the edge of an adventure that could change everything. For the first time, he felt a spark of hope. Despite the fear, the pain, and the unknown dangers ahead, Evan knew that courage, and perhaps humanity itself, could earn respect even from the most powerful alien beings, and the alien Queen had already seen it. Evan followed the Queen through the glowing forest, his arm still sore but bandaged carefully by her healers. The air was thick with an unusual scent, a mix of sweet flowers and minerals. Strange creatures with translucent wings flitted through. The trees, their movements delicate and precise. Every step he took reminded him that this world was alive in ways he had never imagined. The Queen, Solara, moved gracefully, her presence commanding yet calm. Her guards flanked them silently, their spears lowered but still ready. They observed Evan carefully, but none of them made any threatening move. It was clear that their Queen's word was absolute, and even in the presence of an outsider, they obeyed without hesitation. Evan tried to keep up, limping slightly, but Solara slowed her pace. She gestured for him to sit on a smooth stone bench near a small glowing stream. He hesitated, unsure if he should take her offer, but finally lowered himself, feeling the cool energy of the stone seep into his body. Solara crouched in front of him, her luminous eyes studying his bandaged arm. She made soft clicking sounds, pointing at the wound, then at him, then at herself. Evan understood that she was asking questions, trying to communicate. I am Evan," he said carefully, holding up one hand. "Human. I explore. Planet." His voice trembled slightly, but he tried his best to be clear. Solara listened silently, tilting her head as if considering his words. Then she tapped her chest and gestured toward him. Evan realized she wanted to know about humans, their lives, their habits, their purpose. He took a deep breath. "We heal," he said, showing her his medical kit. "We help others." He pointed to his bandaged arm, then to her healers. "We protect life." Solara's expression softened. She tapped her chin thoughtfully, then gestured toward the stream. She picked up a small glowing crystal from the water and held it out. Evan took it cautiously. It felt warm, and a faint pulse of light seemed to match his heartbeat. "Magic?" he whispered. The Queen tilted her head, then made a sound that was almost like a chuckle. It was not magic, but alien technology far beyond anything he had seen. The realization made his chest tighten with both excitement and awe. The queen motioned for him to follow her again. They moved toward a wider path that led to the palace. Evan looked around, trying to memorize every detail. Strange plants with luminous leaves leaned toward them as if bowing. Small creatures with delicate legs scuttled across the ground, disappearing before he could focus. Finally, they reached the palace. Its towers of crystal and metal shimmered in soft light, reflecting colors that seemed impossible. Floating platforms connected the towers, moving smoothly, like they were alive. Evan felt a thrill of wonder. The queen led him inside. The walls pulsed with energy, illuminating the corridors in gentle waves. The air was warm but clean, carrying a subtle hum that seemed to resonate with life itself. Solara's guards remained at a respectful distance, their eyes never leaving Evan. Inside, the queen gestured for him to sit on another stone seat. One of her healers approached with a glowing liquid in a small vessel. They carefully applied it to his wound, and Evan felt warmth and relief spread through his arm. The pain that had been sharp and constant dulled to a manageable ache. Evan looked up at Solara, trying to communicate his gratitude. "Thank you," he said, "for helping me." She inclined her head slightly, a gesture he began to understand as acknowledgement. Time passed, and Evan started to notice the details of Xylar society. The Queen's guards were disciplined, moving with precise synchronization. Every action had meaning and purpose. Even the palace itself seemed to have a consciousness, responding subtly to the Queen's presence. Curiosity grew in Solara's eyes as she observed Evan. He spoke slowly, using gestures and simple words, explaining how humans heal and work together. He told her how humans valued life, cooperation, and compassion. The Queen listened intently, tilting her head and making small clicking sounds. It was clear that his words were new to her, ideas she had not considered in her warrior-based society. One of the guards approached, lowering a small holographic display. It showed recent reports of distant parts of the planet, dangerous creatures, storms, and resource locations. Solara gestured toward Evan, inviting him to examine the display. He carefully studied the information, pointing out patterns and offering suggestions. "Trap. Here," he said, indicating a narrow canyon. "Animals come often. Avoid." He pointed to another area. "Water. Clean. Safe. Camp here." Solara's expression shifted slightly, interest mixed with admiration. She tapped the display, then pointed to him. It was clear she valued his insight, even if it was unconventional for her people. The Queen's curiosity went beyond his knowledge. She seemed intrigued by his courage. Despite being injured in a world full of unknown dangers, Evan had remained calm and observant. He had faced fear, pain, and uncertainty without surrendering. That bravery, combined with his intelligence and compassion, impressed her deeply. Even the guards began to notice. Their eyes, once suspicious, now held respect. They watched his every move, learning from him without realizing it. Evan's presence, fragile and human, had already begun to influence the palace, challenging assumptions about strength and ability. As evening fell, the palace corridors glowed with a gentle light. Evan sat by a window, watching the purple forests below. Solara joined him, standing silently for a moment. Then she gestured toward him, inviting him to speak. I want help," Evan said slowly. "Help your people. Safe. Learn your ways. Share mine." He pointed to his heart. "Together. Strong." Solara's eyes glimmered. She made a series of clicking sounds, which one of the guards translated into gestures. "The human wishes to aid us, even while injured. Brave, yet kind." The Queen nodded slightly, a rare smile forming. She tapped her chest and then gestured toward him, indicating that she accepted his offer. For a moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Despite differences in species, language, and culture, they shared a common principle: courage and care could bridge worlds. As the night deepened, Evan felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had survived a fall, made first contact with an alien queen, and gained her trust even in part. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he also realized something extraordinary. His humanity, his ability to feel, to care, to act despite fear, was being noticed and valued in a place far from Earth. The Queen's presence was imposing but not frightening now. She was a figure of power, yes, but also of curiosity and judgment. And she had seen him, the human with a broken arm, and had chosen to understand, not condemn. That choice, small as it seemed, had opened a door to something greater: friendship, trust, and perhaps the beginning of an alliance that could change everything. Evan's thoughts drifted as he prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring exploration, learning, and perhaps danger, but for the first time, he felt that he was not alone in this alien world. He had an unlikely ally in the Queen, and through her a chance to show that humans were capable of courage, intelligence, and compassion, even to beings who seemed far beyond them. And somewhere deep in the palace, Solara watched, silently pondering what this human could bring to her people and to the world that awaited beyond the stars. The morning light filtered through the crystalline walls of the palace, painting the corridors with soft shades of blue and gold. Evan stretched cautiously, still feeling the stiffness in his arm, but the wound had healed remarkably under the care of Solara's healers. He marveled at the alien technology that had eased his pain so quickly. Solara appeared silently, her graceful form moving through the hall without a sound. Her eyes glimmered with curiosity as she observed Evan. Today, she intended to learn more about him, and perhaps teach him a little about her people. "You will walk," she gestured, pointing to the palace gardens outside. Evan nodded, understanding her intent. He rose carefully, feeling the strength returning to his limbs. He noticed the guards watching closely, their expressions serious, but no longer threatening. The garden was unlike anything Evan had seen before. Plants with translucent petals swayed gently in an unseen breeze, and streams of glowing water wove between crystal-like stones. Strange birds with mirrored feathers fluttered overhead, singing in harmonious tones. Every detail seemed both alien and beautiful, and Evan's curiosity grew with every step. Solara walked beside him, observing silently. She occasionally pointed at a plant, clicking softly, as if testing his response. Evan examined each one, offering simple explanations based on his knowledge of Earth flora. Similar to Earth, but different, stronger glow. He pointed to a plant with luminous vines, then to his own bandaged arm. Healing? Possible? Solara's eyes glimmered, and she nodded slightly. One of the guards approached with a small vial of liquid, and the Queen motioned for Evan to take it. He drank cautiously. Warmth spread through his body, not just healing his wound further, but invigorating him. He realized that Xylar medicine was both scientific and, in its own way, magical. As they walked, Evan began to speak about humans. He described how people cared for one another, how communities worked together to overcome challenges, and how medicine and compassion were valued above brute strength. Solara listened carefully, her head tilting as if each word revealed something new about these strange beings called humans. Humans care more than survive? She asked, her gestures precise, trying to translate her curiosity into something Evan could understand. Yes, Evan replied. We help. We protect. We try to understand. He gestured to himself and then to her, miming the idea of learning from each other. Solara paused, considering his words. She looked at her guards, who were still alert but more relaxed. Then she gestured for them to lower their weapons completely. For the first time, Evan realized that she trusted him, not just as a guest, but as someone who could offer insight and value. The Queen led him to a wide balcony overlooking the forest. From there, Evan could see the full expanse of the glowing trees, winding rivers, and jagged mountains beyond. He felt small in comparison, yet inspired. The planet was vast, alive, and full of possibilities. Solara gestured for him to sit, and he did. She produced a small device that projected holographic images of Xylar history. He saw battles, great constructions, and ceremonies of honor. The Queen pointed to certain events, explaining in gestures the significance of loyalty, bravery, and wisdom in Xylar society. Evan watched closely, fascinated. Though the Xylar prized strength and combat, he noticed a recurring theme. They also admired intelligence, strategy, and courage in unexpected forms. He began to understand why Solara had spared him and tended to his wound. He had shown courage in a situation where fear could have dominated him. Strength. Not only muscles, Evan said slowly, pointing to his arm and then to his head. Solara's eyes brightened at his insight, and she made a series of clicking sounds. One of her guards translated, using gestures. The human believes that strength is more than physical, brave, smart, care. Solara nodded approvingly. She tapped her chest and then pointed to him. It was a silent acknowledgement that she recognized his value beyond his fragile human body. Evan felt a warm sense of accomplishment. His species, often underestimated, could indeed earn respect, even from beings far more powerful. The day continued, with lessons. Solara showed Evan the inner workings of the palace, energy conduits that powered the entire structure, floating platforms that responded to thought, and intricate defense systems designed to protect the Queen and her people. Evan marveled at each innovation, offering suggestions based on human engineering. He realized that some of the ideas were simple, but they sparked interest in Solara. "You think differently," she said. Her voice was soft, almost approving. "Problem solved. Unusual. Effective." Evan smiled, realizing that even on a planet so different from Earth, human ingenuity could shine. He felt pride not in himself but in what humanity represented: curiosity, courage, and compassion. Later, Solara invited him to participate in a small training exercise. The Queen's guards demonstrated their combat routines, moving in perfect synchronization. Evan observed carefully, analyzing patterns and strategies. When Solara gestured for him to try a simple maneuver, he hesitated but then followed her instructions. Though clumsy at first, he adapted quickly, using observation and problem-solving rather than raw strength. The guards watched closely, nodding, in subtle approval. Solara's eyes glimmered with satisfaction. Even without the power of a Xylar warrior, Evan had shown adaptability and courage, qualities they could respect. As the sun set, painting the palace in golden and purple hues, Solara gestured for them to rest. Evan sat quietly reflecting on the day. He had learned about Xylar culture, shared human values, and begun to earn their respect. For a human so far from home, the feeling was extraordinary. Solara approached and stood silently beside him. For a moment, there was no need for words. Evan could feel her curiosity, her cautious admiration, and her growing trust. He realized that their bond, fragile as it was, had begun with a simple act, showing courage despite fear and respecting life, even in a dangerous world. The Queen's guards, once tense and suspicious, now moved about the palace with a new demeanor. They no longer saw Evan merely as an outsider. They recognized potential, intelligence, and bravery. In a society built on honor and strength, that recognition was rare and significant. Evan felt a sense of hope. He was still far from Earth, still among beings who could have easily harmed him. Yet, through his actions, he had opened the door to understanding and trust. He realized that humanity's true strength lay not in power or weaponry, but in courage, compassion, and the willingness to stand for others. Solara watched him quietly as he settled to rest. She had seen something remarkable: a human, vulnerable yet brave, injured yet resilient. That image would remain with her, a reminder that strength could come in many forms, and that alliances could form where none were expected. As night fell, Evan drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep. The palace hummed softly around him, a living structure of light and energy. For the first time since he had landed on this alien world, he felt safe. He knew the days ahead would bring challenges, but he also knew something extraordinary. He had earned the attention and trust of a queen. And, in a galaxy full of unknown dangers, that trust could be the difference between survival and failure. Evan woke to a sudden vibration through the palace floor. The soft hum of energy that usually filled the halls had grown louder, more urgent. He sat up quickly, feeling a mixture of curiosity and concern. Something was happening, and instinct told him it was serious. Solara appeared almost immediately, her presence calm yet commanding. She motioned for him to follow, her glowing eyes fixed ahead. Her guards moved swiftly, forming a protective formation around them. Evan noticed the tension in their posture. Whatever was coming, it demanded full attention. They arrived at a large observation chamber overlooking the skies above the planet. Evan's eyes widened. A fleet of alien ships, dark and angular, hovered in the upper atmosphere. Their numbers were overwhelming, their weapons glinting ominously in the sunlight. This was no simple incursion. It was a full-scale attack. Solara's guards reported quickly in clicks and gestures. The queen's face remained composed, but her eyes were sharp with calculation. She gestured to Evan, inviting him to study the holographic map displayed in the center of the room. Evan approached, examining the positions of the enemy fleet, the terrain of the planet, and the placement of Xylar defenses. His mind raced. Humans might not have the raw strength of the Xylar, but they had strategy, improvisation, and creative thinking. He knew that if he could contribute even one useful idea, it might save countless lives. Trap. Here, he said, pointing to a narrow canyon where the enemy ships would be forced to fly in a straight line. Ambush. Good. He moved his hand across the map, connecting streams of energy and hidden defensive systems. Use. Terrain. Advantage. Surprise. Solara nodded, her glowing eyes focused. She made a series of clicking sounds, then gestured for her commanders to consider his advice. Some of the guards exchanged skeptical looks, but the queen's authority overrode their hesitation. Human. Suggest. Plan, she said, her gestures precise. Explain. More. Evan outlined his ideas carefully. He suggested combining Xylar technology with human-style tactics, using the planet's natural formations to funnel the enemy, setting up ambush points, and employing energy nets to slow advancing ships. He emphasized efficiency and minimizing risk to civilians and Xylar warriors. Solara listened, her expression unreadable, but she tapped her chest, a sign that she valued his input. After a moment, she signaled the commanders to prepare for battle using Evan's guidance. The guards moved with renewed focus, following the plan even though it was unconventional. Hours passed in preparation. Evan assisted where he could, pointing out weak spots in the defense lines, suggesting where energy shields could be reinforced and predicting likely enemy movements. Every recommendation was met with scrutiny, but gradually the commanders began to trust his judgment. When the enemy fleet began its descent, the palace shuddered slightly from the energy waves of their weapons. The sky was filled with dark silhouettes, moving with precision and intent. Evan's heart pounded. This was the real test, not just of Xylar strength but of human ingenuity and courage. The first wave of enemy ships entered the canyon exactly as Evan had predicted. Hidden energy nets deployed, slowing several ships while Xylar defenders launched attacks from elevated platforms. The ambush worked perfectly, forcing the enemy into positions where they could be overwhelmed. Evan watched in awe as the combination of human tactics and Xylar strength took effect. He shouted directions to the commanders, pointing out ships that needed attention and suggesting maneuvers for the defenders. Despite being far from home, his knowledge and quick thinking were making a tangible difference. Solara stood beside him, her eyes scanning the battlefield. Though her face remained calm, Evan sensed her approval. She had trusted him with critical decisions, and he had delivered. The guards, who had once eyed him with suspicion, now observed him with respect, acknowledging that this fragile human had a sharp mind and a brave heart. Midway through the battle, a group of enemy ships broke through the outer defenses and headed directly toward the palace. Panic flared among some of the guards, but Evan reacted instantly. He suggested using the floating platforms to create a moving barrier, forcing the ships to slow and exposing them to counterattacks. The plan worked. The enemy ships faltered, giving the Xylar warriors the advantage they needed. Evan's heart raced as he realized that his quick thinking had just prevented a major disaster. After hours of intense fighting, the enemy fleet began to retreat. Their numbers diminished and their formation broken. Cheers rose from the palace, though subdued by the cautious awareness that more threats might come. Evan sank to the floor, exhausted but exhilarated. He had not only survived but had helped turn the tide of battle. Solara approached him, her glowing eyes meeting his. She tapped her chest and then pointed to him, a gesture of recognition, respect, and gratitude. Evan nodded, feeling a warmth he had never expected. Despite being a stranger on this alien world, he had earned the trust of the Queen herself. The Yati guards gathered around, their previous suspicion replaced by admiration. They nodded subtly, acknowledging his contributions. For the first time, Evan felt that humanity's strengths, courage, intelligence, and compassion were not just recognized, but valued by beings far stronger and more advanced than humans. After the battle, Solara summoned Evan to a private chamber. She gestured for him to rest, and her healers checked his arm and overall condition. He was tired, bruised, and exhilarated, but his spirit was stronger than ever. "You, human, brave, clever," Solara gestured, her tone approving. "You help our people survive." Evan smiled weakly, understanding her meaning. "I want help all safe," he said. "Together. Strong." Solara nodded, clearly pleased with his answer. For her, the value of an ally went beyond strength. It was intelligence, courage, and the will to protect others. Evan T.A. had shown all of these qualities, and in doing so, had changed her perception of humans forever. That night, as Evan rested in the palace, he reflected on the day's events. He had survived his injury, gained the trust of a queen, and contributed meaningfully to the defense of an entire planet. The experience was exhausting but exhilarating. He realized that humanity's true power lay not in physical strength alone, but in the combination of intelligence, courage, and compassion. And in a galaxy filled with unknown dangers, those qualities could earn respect even from the most powerful and advanced civilizations. The sun rose over the alien landscape, casting soft purple and gold light across the palace. Evan woke early, his arm fully healed, but his mind alert. The previous day's battle had left an impression, not just on him, but on everyone in the palace. Solara had summoned him to a strategy session, eager to use his insight again. The Queen's war room was filled with holographic maps, glowing displays, and the low hum of energy. Her guards and commanders were present, all waiting silently for Solara's instructions. Evan entered cautiously, feeling the weight of expectation. Despite being human, his ideas had turned the tide of the last battle. Today, they hoped, he could help secure lasting safety for the planet. Solara gestured for him to approach the central hologram. She pointed to a section of enemy ships scattered in orbit, indicating that another attack was imminent. The human analyzed the positions carefully, noting weaknesses, blind spots, and natural terrain that could be used to their advantage. Use high ground, energy, focus, he said, pointing to elevated platforms in the river canyons. Force, fleet, narrow path, easier, hit. Solara nodded, her glowing eyes full of focus. She tapped her chest and then motioned to her commanders to follow Evan's plan. Some of the guards whispered to each other, still wary of human advice, but the Queen's authority was absolute. The day became a flurry of preparation. Evan helped coordinate energy shield placements, warning where they might fail. He suggested diversion strategies, where smaller Xylar units would lure the enemy into controlled zones, allowing the main defenses to strike with precision. As the enemy fleet approached, Evan's heart raced. This was the ultimate test, strategy versus raw force. He watched from a high platform as the alien ships descended, their engines glowing ominously against the purple sky. The first wave moved into the traps exactly as he predicted, narrowing into the canyon paths. The human-initiated strategy worked better than anyone could have expected. Xylar energy nets slowed several ships, while precise strikes from elevated platforms disabled the others. Evan directed reinforcements, shouting instructions that were quickly translated by the Queen's guards. His suggestions, simple yet effective, turned chaos into control. Suddenly, a group of enemy ships broke formation, aiming directly at the palace. Panic rippled through some of the guards, but Evan reacted instantly. He pointed to floating platforms and energy conduits, devising a makeshift barrier that funneled the attackers into a trap. Move. Fast, block, slow them, he shouted. The Xylar warriors executed his plan perfectly. The enemy ships faltered, their speed and maneuverability reduced. Evan's heart pounded with relief as the main defenses struck, disabling the intruders. The Queen's eyes glimmered with approval. She gestured toward him, her silent acknowledgement both powerful and rare. She truly trusted him. Hours passed in intense coordination. Evan moved from one platform to another, offering guidance, observing patterns, and suggesting improvisations. He noticed subtle weaknesses in the enemy's formation and used them to guide counterattacks. His human ingenuity, combined with Xylar strength, became the decisive factor. By the end of the battle, the enemy fleet began to retreat. Their numbers were diminished, their formation shattered, and their strategy exposed as ineffective against the combined human and Xylar tactics. Cheers rose among the palace staff and guards, but Evan remained focused, ensuring no threats remained hidden. Solara approached him afterward, her glowing eyes reflecting pride and gratitude. She tapped her chest, then gestured toward Evan, indicating her recognition. The guards, who had once been suspicious and tense, now looked at him with respect and admiration. He was no longer just a visitor. He had earned a place of trust and value in their eyes. You, human, clever, brave, Solara said, her gestures precise and approving. Your ideas saved many lives. Evan nodded, a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction washing over him. I want help, always, he said. Protect your people. Together. Strong. The Queen smiled faintly, an expression rare for someone of her status. She gestured toward the palace courtyard, inviting him to rest briefly. He sat down watching the glowing rivers and forests outside. Despite fatigue, he felt exhilarated. He had helped defend an alien world, and in doing so, demonstrated that humans could be resourceful, brave, and compassionate. Later, the Queen summoned him to walk through the city. Evan observed Xylar society up close, warriors training in synchronized movements, engineers maintaining energy systems, and civilians working in harmony with technology that seemed alive. He marveled at the efficiency and beauty of their culture, but he also noticed subtle limitations, rigid thinking, strict hierarchies, and hesitation in unconventional situations. Solara guided him to a council chamber. The Queen gestured for him to address her advisors, explaining his strategies and reasoning. Evan spoke slowly, using gestures and simple words, demonstrating how combining their strengths with creative thinking could lead to better outcomes. The advisors listened, initially skeptical, but gradually began to nod. Evan's human perspective, though different, offered practical solutions that complemented Xylar methods. For the first time, they saw that unconventional thinking could be as valuable as brute strength. By evening, the palace was calm. Evan reflected on the day's events. He had survived his injury, learned Xylar culture, and contributed to defending the planet. More importantly, He had built trust, showing that courage, intelligence, and compassion could bridge species and civilizations. Solara approached him once more, standing silently beside him. Her eyes reflected understanding and approval. She gestured for him to sit, then tapped her chest. Evan understood. She recognized his value not just for the battle, but as a symbol of humanity's potential. You, human. Different. Special, she said, her gestures precise. Brave. Smart. Care. These rare qualities. Evan smiled, feeling warmth spread through him. I learn from you, he replied. Together. Help. Many. The Queen nodded. Though she rarely displayed emotion openly, Evan could sense the bond forming between them. It was based not on fear, strength, or obligation, but on mutual respect and shared purpose. As night fell, Evan lay on a simple mat in a quiet chamber. The palace hummed gently around him, alive with energy and motion. He thought of Earth, of home, but also of this alien world where he had been wounded, saved, and then entrusted with responsibility. He realized that human ingenuity, courage, and compassion were more than survival traits. They were qualities that could inspire respect, forge alliances, and change the course of events even in a galaxy filled with powerful civilizations. And as he drifted to sleep, he knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But he also knew something extraordinary. He had proven that humans could shine, even among the stars, and that the trust of an alien, Queen, could open doors to a future full of possibility. The morning light bathed the palace in shades of gold and violet, signaling the end of a long and challenging chapter. Evan rose early, feeling stronger and more confident than ever. The battles were over, at least for now, and the enemy fleet had retreated far into space. The planet was safe, thanks to the combined efforts of the Xylar and the guidance of the human. Solara appeared silently beside him, her glowing eyes reflecting calm and focus. Today was different. There was no urgent battle, no crisis demanding immediate attention. Today was about reflection, understanding, and the quiet acknowledgement of what had been accomplished. You, human, changed. Much. Solara gestured, her movements precise and deliberate. Your courage, your thinking, your care, helped many. Evan nodded, a faint smile on his face. I only try to help, he said. I learn from you and your people. Solara led him through the palace, showing him spaces he had not yet explored, gardens filled with plants that shimmered like liquid light, halls with energy conduits that responded to thought, and quiet chambers where the Xylar elders met to discuss history and culture. Evan observed it all with fascination, noting how technology, nature, and society intertwined seamlessly. Along the way, he noticed the guards and advisors watching him. Their expressions had changed. No longer suspicious, they looked at him with respect and curiosity. Some of them nodded subtly as he passed, acknowledging the human who had not only survived their world, but helped protect it. Finally, Solara guided him to a large chamber overlooking the forest below. The rivers glowed faintly, and the tall trees swayed as if waving in greeting. Evan took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace he had not felt since arriving on this alien planet. You must decide, Solara said, her gestures indicating a choice. Stay with us, learn, share, or return home. Evan thought carefully. He missed Earth, missed the people and life he had known, but he also felt a deep connection. Here, a sense of purpose he could not ignore. He realized that his journey had changed him, expanded his understanding of what it meant to be human. I must go home, he said finally, his voice calm. But I never forget you or your people. I hope someday return. Solara's eyes glimmered, a faint smile forming on her face. She tapped her chest, then pointed to him, a gesture of acknowledgement, respect, and farewell. Evan understood. He had earned her trust, her admiration, and a bond that transcended species and worlds. The Queen summoned her guards to assist Evan to the landing platform. The journey was silent, but respectful. Evan carried his essentials, including a small data device filled with observations, sketches, and knowledge he had gathered during his time on the planet. It was not just a record of the world. It was a symbol of human potential and the bridges he had built between species. As the ship rose into the sky, Evan looked back at the palace, at Solara standing proudly with her guards, and at the vast, alien landscape that stretched beyond the horizon. A wave of gratitude and wonder washed over him. He had survived, adapted, and left a mark on a civilization far beyond Earth. The journey through space was quiet. Evan reflected on all that had happened, the fall into the hidden pit, the initial fear of the Queen's guards, the healing, the battles, and the trust that had formed between him and Solara. Each event had taught him something about courage, compassion, and ingenuity. He realized that being human was not just about physical strength or technology. It was about resilience, empathy, and the willingness to act even in the face of fear. It was about using intelligence and creativity to solve problems, to protect others, and to build connections across differences. Back on the Xyler homeworld, Solara gathered her advisors. She recounted Evan's deeds not just as a tale of survival, but as a lesson in values. The Queen emphasized how courage, compassion, and clever thinking had saved lives and forged alliances. The guards and advisors nodded in understanding, slowly incorporating this new perspective into their culture. Evan's presence had left a mark far beyond the battlefield. His influence spread quietly, through stories, through the admiration of those who had watched him act, and through Solara's guidance. Humans, despite their seeming fragility, could inspire respect, trust, and even change in civilizations that were far stronger and more advanced. Meanwhile, Evan's ship traveled through space, bringing him closer to Earth. The stars stretched endlessly around him, but he no longer felt small or insignificant. He carried with him knowledge, experience, and a bond that bridged worlds. He had learned that courage, compassion, and intelligence were universal, and that these qualities could forge connections where fear or power alone could not. As he approached his home planet, Evan reflected on the lessons of the Xyler. The Queen's eye, curiosity, her willingness to see beyond appearances, and the trust she extended to him had changed his understanding of interstellar relations. He realized that even in a galaxy filled with unknowns, respect and understanding could build bridges that spanned light years. When he finally landed on Earth, the familiar sights and sounds felt comforting, yet he knew he had been changed forever. He carried a sense of purpose and a belief in humanity's potential. He knew that humans, though often underestimated, could rise to challenges with courage, creativity, and compassion. Evan smiled as he stepped onto familiar soil. The stars above seemed brighter now, filled with possibilities and worlds yet to explore. Somewhere out there, Solara watched, thinking of the human who had survived, adapted, and inspired. The bond they had formed was quiet, strong, and enduring, a reminder that courage and kindness could transcend species, planets, and galaxies. In the days that followed, Evan shared his experiences cautiously. He spoke of the alien planet, the Queen and the battles, emphasizing not the danger but the lessons learned, the importance of empathy, creativity, and courage. Humans listened, some with disbelief, others with hope. He realized that sharing these lessons could inspire his own species to reach beyond limitations, to act with bravery, and to seek understanding across differences. Though his journey on the alien world had ended, its impact remained. Evan knew that the future was full of unknown challenges, but he also knew that humans could face them with resilience and heart. And in some distant corner of the galaxy, the Queen remembered a human who had fallen, who had been healed, and who had shown that even the smallest and most fragile beings could rise to greatness. Evan looked to the horizon, a new determination in his eyes. The universe was vast, and humans were only beginning to understand their place within it. But he had seen what courage, compassion, and intelligence could accomplish, even in a world far beyond Earth. And he knew, without a doubt, that humanity had the power to shine across the stars. With that thought, he turned toward the rising sun, ready to continue his journey, not just as an explorer, but as a human who had touched an alien world and learned that the heart of humanity could inspire respect, trust, and hope across the universe.